All right, welcome into Big Hitters Only. We just watched UNC defeat Virginia Tech 91-59. It is Tuesday, March 4th at 9:03, bringing you the podcast, the Immediate Reaction podcast. We have producer Connor and a new guest for the Reaction podcast, David Allen. David Allen, he's been on a previous podcast. This is his first Reaction podcast. So welcome, David. I'm Ross Martin. First, this is brought to you by Delta Spirits, THC-based beverage. Come in these nice little cans and big bottles. A great way to relax after a hard day at work. A good alcohol substitute. Get some better sleep, relax, have some fun with your friends or your partner. Delta Spirits, drink deltaspirits.com. Promo code BHO. We appreciate their support. Check them out. We'll talk about them a little more later. All right, guys, let's get right into it. David, I'm going to go right to you. This was like a old school UNC beatdown in the ACC. This is like when I was in school with Tyler Hansbrough, some of those teams with Kendall Marshall, John Henson, Harrison Barnes. Everything was going in from three. Everyone got a shot at some offensive stuff there. UNC made 15 threes. I think they said that was a season high, 15 for 28. They shot 58.9% from the field, 53.6% from three-point range. 7 players hit threes. Everything kind of clicked after that long run to close the first half. David, what are some initial takeaways, initial reactions to what you saw from UNC as they win their 6th straight game and try to fight and claw to make the NCAA tournament?
Two things stand out to me. First is that we all know this. Basketball, the game looks better when the shots are going in. And in the last 6 games that UNC has won, we're talking 55, 56, 59, 48% from the field, 38% or better from 3 in all 6 games. Just pouring it in from 3, pouring it in from the field. And that's not always going to happen. So then you look for what are the secondary things that this team is doing that when the ball's not going in at a 60% rate that they can do. And it's been the defensive intensity. It's been forcing turnovers, 12 forced turnovers tonight, I believe. It's the 5th or 6th straight game that there are 8+ turnovers. The defensive intensity looked great tonight. And I think this lineup that you're seeing with Lubin at the 5, Powell and Jackson, when Jackson's shooting the ball well, there's so much defensive versatility, so much ability to switch on defense. And Seth is such a good defensive guard. And when he's shooting the ball well, when he's playing in transition, it gives Tar Heel fans a lot of hope, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Jalen Withers, who's been kind of like the better player for UNC down in the last 4, 5, 6 games. He didn't have his best game offensively. Let's see what he finished with. Jalen Withers, 5 points. He had a 3 kind of the second half. Didn't get his first basket for a while. So other players had to step up. So it wasn't really Jalen Withers' show. I thought that Allen Lubin was pretty solid. He's been kind of very consistent. But I wonder, Connor, do you think it's this lineup? Has that really been why? Or is it just making shots? Are the shots going in because of this lineup? What do you think it is that's clicked offensively for this team? What stands out to you?
Well, specifically for the lineup, I do think that is a big factor because you have the 2 guards, the 2 true lengthy wings that can switch on defense, and then the center. We've been preaching that the last few weeks on this show. And to go off of that, one person that's benefited, I think, the most from this new lineup is RJ Davis. And you might be like, wait a second, he didn't contribute that much. He had 15 tonight. He was 5 for 6, 3 for 4 from 3. He didn't shoot a lot. We were texting about it. We said, is this going to be an RJ Davis game? It wasn't a 25, 30-point RJ Davis outpouring of scoring, but I thought the confidence in his shot was so noticeable and so much different than what we've seen earlier this year. And I want to give the credit, number 1, to him, but number 2, to the guys around him. Because when you have multiple guys on offense that are a threat, when you have Drake Powell hitting corner threes, Jalen Withers the last few games hitting threes, when you have Ian Jackson off the bench, when you have guys like that really stretch the floor and take the defensive attention away from RJ Davis, all of a sudden we get flashes like we saw tonight of confident step in 3, step back 3 from 30 feet, 5 feet behind the line that he hit over that Virginia Tech center there. That's what you want to see. And if you're RJ Davis, I want to give the credit to him, but also the credit to the guys around him for being legitimate threats the defense has to attend to and not being able to just solely key in on RJ Davis.
Yeah, I thought RJ helped carry the team in the first half. I don't think he did as much in the second half. but hit 3 threes at least in the first half, a couple setbacks, drove into the lane, hit a really nice pull-up jumper. It looked like R.J. Davis of old. Looking at some more stats here, I think a big thing with the lineup, David, is the rebounding. They've out-rebounded teams. I don't know if you have any stats on that, but tonight they out-rebounded Virginia Tech 38-27. I think they've been – yeah, that's a huge part of it. You're going to get bigger. You're playing Van Allen Lubin and Jalen Withers. Although they're not massively tall, you're getting them in the lineup alongside a Drake Powell who's playing his natural position. And that leads to another point. Like, I think Hubert going with this this lineup, the starting lineup, has allowed players to play their natural position. No longer is Drake having to guard fours. He's being able to be more active on the perimeter as a defender and a scorer. They've kind of committed to a Claude and Withers 1-2 combo down low. And they're really not playing Jalen Washington as much. I think he got 9 minutes tonight. So It's really just those two big men. So I think committing to those roles has helped everybody. Maybe allowed, because there's not as many perimeter players on the court, it's allowed R.J. Davis to kind of know that he is more of the alpha scorer as opposed to having to defer to Elliott or Seth or Ian as much. And then Ian and Seth come in and are so good. I mean, 19 points for Ian Jackson to lead the team, 17 points for Seth Trimble as a second leading scorer, and then 15 for R.J. Davis. So everybody's still getting theirs. David, what do you think about how Hubert's kind of found something with this lineup and how it's related to this run here, 6 straight for the Tar Heels?
Yeah, I mean, to hit your point, your first point about rebounding, I think that, many of us know that Roy likes to get the stat sheets at every timeout. I believe the number one thing he used to look at was rebounding. That was the first thing he looked at. This is a much better rebounding team with this lineup. Trimble rebounds way above his size, one of the most aggressive rebounders you have at the guard position. And I completely agree with the point on RJ and feeling more comfortable in this lineup. I think over the last 10 years, you've seen this weird thing with Carolina's backcourt where Marcus and Joel Berry learned to play together. Marcus was more of a point guard, and then Joel comes in. How do these two work together? You saw it with RJ and Caleb, where RJ would take the ball up the court a lot and have Caleb play off ball. And when Cadeau came in, RJ slid over a little bit and played a little bit more off ball. And when you bring RJ in alongside Seth, the two freshman wings, RJ gets to control the offense a little bit more. And Elliott had a good night. He plays so well in the half court on occasion. And you go, if we could get this Elliott Cadeau in the half court, making great passes, what is this team going to be? And I think this team is a puzzle. It's been that way the entire season. And it feels like Hubert is finally figuring out the sets that he likes, the different 5-man lineups that work together. And I think that the versatility that you get with that Withers, Powell, Jackson wing set is going to be huge in the ACC tournament and hopefully later on in March.
Elliott Cadeau with 12 assists. That's got to be up there as a season high. I don't think I've seen that from him this season. 3 turnovers, not awful, not the best, but only 2 points. So not a huge offensively scoring game for Elliott, but definitely a distributor with 12. All right, hey guys, so UNC's beaten a lot of bad teams on this 6-game winning streak. It was refreshing right now. Syracuse, they got blown out by Clemson with the starting lineup, and then beat Syracuse on the road, NC State, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Miami, and then blew out Virginia Tech. The way they played against Virginia Tech is like, all right, this could be a Sweet 16. They played amazing, and I don't. It made me think stronger about how good this team can be. But up until this game, I just thought it was the nature of who they were playing. I don't know how much ACC you have watched, but like Miami was awful. Virginia's not good. State sucks. Florida State, I think UNC at Florida State, that was a pretty good win for a Florida State team that has been decent. What do y'all think about that? Like, do you think differently about UNC after these 6 games and after this blowout win versus Virginia Tech? What do you think, Connor?
Think differently. I think this is just what's in front of us. This is the Carolina schedule. The ACC's in a down year. We have to use these last 5-6 games against subpar opponents to evaluate this team. So it's like, yes, we can caveat everything we say with the opponents suck. You're supposed to beat a sub 500 NC State team. You're supposed to beat a 500 Virginia Tech team. That's what you're supposed to do. But I don't think we can take that away from how well Carolina's playing and that they actually have found something. And one thing I wrote down is maybe this is what they needed. Maybe they needed this stretch of subpar ACC teams to kind of get them rolling at the right time. So I don't want to fault them too much for the schedule because they had no control over that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, this is huge for their confidence. I mean, Ian Jackson seeing those shots go in, Drake Powell seeing them go in, even Jalen Washington hitting a three, Kay Tyson coming in and giving UNC a bump, RJ Davis knocking out some threes. Like this game is huge for their confidence. Like no better way to enter the Duke game. David, do you think differently about this team after the 6-game winning streak, and after tonight's game in particular, about how they play against Duke, how they can maybe make a run in the ACC tournament?
I do. I think if I'm Hubert, I'm preaching perspective, because if you get beat by 30 against Duke, you don't want that to translate into a bad week next week, right? And that is possible. You can get blown out at Duke at home on senior night. So you've got to keep the momentum of these last 6 games going even past the Duke game. When I was doing homework today, one of the things I was thinking about is the 2 one-point losses to Stanford and Wake Forest are so massive. And when you if those games flip and you win those 2 games, you're thinking about a completely different trajectory for this season. The one thing that I wanted to point out about the last 6 games for the Tar Heels, one player has been in double digits on his box score plus minus for the last 6 games. I know it's a little bit of a weird stat. Plus minus can be good or bad. That's Drake Powell.
Yeah.
And I think Drake Powell he might not, I should have made you guys guess to see how many people you would have gone through before him. Powell has been so big for this team. Even tonight, it's like when the ball finds him in the corner, I've got faith that he's either knocking down the 3 or he's doing something good with the ball. And I think he is the key on offense in a lot of ways. He's the key swing man. When Jackson's not hitting, can Powell be stable for you? And I just think he brings so much on the defensive side. He can probably guard 1 through 4 comfortably. And I think that in the Duke game, he's going to be big. And when you look at whoever it's going to be in the first or second round of the ACC tournament, whether it's SMU, Wake, one of those teams, I think Powell's this guy who's riding a hot stretch who we need to continue to feature.
Yeah, Powell was, I mean, not everyone was pretty much in the positive tonight except for James Brown, -3. But Drake Powell plus 30, Seth Trimble plus 30 leads right to my point. Those guys are so versatile defensively, so athletic. Seth Trimble's block in the first half, which led to a layup on the other end for him. What he can do offensively as an attacker. We talked about that early in the season when he was, leading UNC and scoring in a lot of games. But those 2 guys, they have the size, the physicality you want from a perimeter player on offense and defense. I hope they both come back next year. It provides you a really good, strong base in the perimeter to build around with transfers and some freshmen, things like that. Seth Trimble and Drake Powell. Let's see.
Real quick, I want to bounce off that. You asked about the week schedule. I don't think that erases all the problems we've felt about Carolina all year, but there are certain things to pick apart from these games, and I'll go to tonight specifically. That 15-1 run to close the first half in the final 3 minutes. This UNC team has consistently let teams back in games, given up big runs at the end of the first half, throughout this year so far. So to see them be on the opposite side of that and dive for loose balls and hit big threes and come up with big blocks, that Seth Trimble block, that's an encouraging sign. And that's something I want to take away. I don't want to excuse all the UNC shortcomings we've seen so far this season, but it's runs like that, it's stretches like that really give me belief that this team will be competitive against Duke on Saturday and maybe make a run in the ACC tournament and maybe beyond.
So I want to answer my own question about how I feel about this team now after 6 games. And maybe, David, you can get some of your stats that you had from the last 5 or 6 games you wanted to share with us. And then we'll go into some ACC tournament, Duke stuff, and maybe look at the bubble a little bit. There's not too much to say else about this game against Virginia Tech. It was just dominant. It was fun to watch. It was awesome seeing so many players hit threes. I mean, Kay Tyson getting in there with a rebound, and then immediately a 3, and then drive. Never seen him drive to the basket and take someone off the dribble. But for the first 3 or 4 games, Syracuse State, Virginia Tech, Florida State, I mean, even into the Miami game, I was like, man, this is fool's gold. Like, this team, they're beating bad teams. This is the worst, might be the worst ACC the ACC has been in a long, long time, maybe ever, considering how bad the bottom of the ACC is, and really how there's only really one good team, and then Clemson and Louisville, and then it's a bunch of mediocrity below them. So I was like, man, this doesn't really mean much. But this game tonight gave me a little more hope. You're seeing a pretty large sample size of UNC playing very strong offensively, shooting well, in 5 or 6 straight games. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but like being very consistent from 3. Jalen Withers play. It's not just one game for Jalen Withers; it's multiple games of him playing well. Vin Allen Lubin being a very solid rebounder and offensive player in the post, and players like Drake, Powell, Ian Jackson, RJ Davis having really good games. And it's coming from a lot of angles. We just mentioned all these different players. I mean, UNC's getting contributions. I know in the last game, 6 players scored in double digits. Tonight, you had 5 players score in double digits, and then 2 players scored 5 points. But you had, really good contributions from across the lineup, which, I mean, that will lead to wins. You don't have just one guy scoring 30 points and everybody else contributing. So, I think it's a larger sample size now. It's dominant at Virginia Tech, which is a pretty decent win given the lack of strength of the ACC. So I do have a little more hope about if they get a chance in the ACC tournament or even in the NCAA tournament. They can play pretty well. I think Hubert has unlocked something. All right, let's move on a little bit here. David, do you have anything you want to talk about with what UNC's done during this 6-game winning streak?
No, you hit almost everything I want to talk about, which is just that in those last 6 games, when you look at the 3-point percentage numbers and the field goal percentage numbers, they're so much higher than UNC's average in the previous 20-plus games. And the question will be, is this because of the lineup changes? Is this because of the spacing? Or is this is how basketball goes? And you can go on a run where you get hot. A couple things I wanted to highlight, though, aside from Powell's plus-minus and how important he's been. Vin Allen Lubin's 71.1% from the field this season would be the highest of any qualified player in Division I basketball so far. He hasn't qualified. He doesn't take enough shots. That's where we're at with Lubin. And I think that there were thoughts that you needed Washington to be a 5 who could spread the floor, right? There were thoughts that you needed more than a rim runner at the 5. You don't. Like Lubin doing what he's doing, grabbing rebounds on the offensive glass, shooting 71% from the floor is going to be enough, and it's going to be huge for this team to have a steady 5. It's just a matter of what are you going to get in the Washington Brown Claude.
Ty Claude, yeah.
Right. The Ty Claude minutes, what are you going to get there?
David, I wanted to bounce off that. I want to ask you this. How much credit do you give to the lineup change starting 2 real wings, Jalen Withers, Drake Powell, that help on the glass? Withers has had 7 boards at least in 3 of his last 4. How much of that has helped Vin Allen Lubin kind of take this next step into what we've seen, having 2 true wings with length and athleticism paired beside him?
Has to help, right? I mean, those lineups that we started in the beginning of the season with Trimble, Cadeau, and RJ Davis, the thought there was like, we're going to shoot the lights out and spread the floor. And when that didn't happen, you move to these 2 wings. Withers rebounds well for his size. I mean, he's sneaky, like 6'10", I think, actually. And he's rebounded well his entire time he's been at Carolina. But it is has to be a huge help for Lubin. And he's just played great these last 6 games. And the one other thing to bounce off the end of the first half, start of the second half, these middle 8 minutes that you hear a lot of talk about in football, bringing it to basketball tonight, as we mentioned, a 15-1 surge at the end of the first half and a 21-6 surge to begin the second half. You're never going to get that consistently, but those are 100% the frames of the game where the Wake Forest game went down the drain, the Stanford game went down the drain. It's these critical sections where when UNC, when the shots aren't falling, was falling apart. And so it's great to see this team get hot at the right time.
I like that word you use, consistency, because last point I'll make about tonight, I feel like knowing what you're going to get out of your rotation is such an underrated luxury to have in college basketball. Because you look at the beginning of the year when Carolina and Hubert Davis was really grasping at straws. It's like, okay, we'll start 4 guards. Okay, Tyson, can you give us something? Oh, we're going to play Ty Claude more. He was really just grasping at straws. And now to have this 8 to 9 man rotation really ironed out and nailed down, I think that also contributes to the success, like we've mentioned. So just that consistency. And to go off the Lubin point, you look at his last 5. 13-5 against State, 14-6 against Virginia, 10-7 against Florida State, 19-5 against Miami, and then 10-11, a double-double tonight against Virginia Tech. So I think his progression has come a long way in helping this team as well.
And I think, also you're seeing that consistency in the lineup. Like, I think Cadeau's minutes have dropped 24 tonight. I think it's kind of where you want him, right in that range, 24 minutes. And because of that, you have Seth Trimble play a little more, 21 minutes. A couple of these are just going to be a little bit smaller because they did get the walk-ons in at the end there. Ian Jackson with 26 minutes. So spreading the love there and giving Seth and Ian a little more time. And Drake Powell leading the team in minutes. I think that's been the case for at least a couple of these games down the stretch. All right, we're going to stop there with the Virginia Tech breakdown. Tar Heels just dominant, 91-59. It was a fun game to watch. We missed those games where it's just it's a weeknight in some cold, dreary ACC away location, and the Tar Heels just run them out of the gym. It was fun to watch. I mean, 5 threes from Ian Jackson. Insane there late. Let's get into, we're going to talk a little ACC tournament seeding. I did some research today. We'll get into some bubble talk as well. First, let's mention Delta Spirits again. We've been getting a lot of good sales on these. DeltaSpirits.com. It's like an alcohol substitute. It's a cocktail. It's good over ice. This is essentially like a liquor substitute. You can mix with any cocktail. It feels great. It's euphoric. It's relaxing. It works. It's a THC-based Delta 9 type beverage. Drink DeltaSpirits.com. Promo code BHO. Here's BHO10. Sorry, BHO10. Blueberry lemonade, cherry limeade. This is the Paloma, and this is ginger mule, one of our favorites. I know you're a big THC guy, David. But check that out. Drink DeltaSpirits.com. Promo code BHO10. It's a local Kernsville, Greensboro company. All right, David, Connor, ACC seeding. This is important because UNC, we'll break it down here. UNC doesn't have any quality wins. They have one quad 1 win over UCLA. They're like 1-10 in quad 1 wins. They're not getting many chances because the ACC sucks. The only way to get a chance at a quad 1 win to close out the season is they play Duke. So they have a big opportunity on Saturday. And then they have getting a chance to play Clemson or Louisville in the ACC tournament.
Right.
I'm considering games against Duke a loss. Like I'm not really entertaining a win over Duke on Saturday. I'm not treating that as part of this scenario. So what UNC has to do right now, they're aligned to be a number 6 seed in the ACC tournament, which would align them with a matchup against the number 3 seed, which right now would likely be Clemson. Not the best matchup for UNC. There's some other scenarios out there. They could sneak into the 4 seed or the 5 seed. And that would give them a game potentially against a Wake Forest, against an SMU potentially, because there's more games to be played, and then a matchup with Duke. I don't think a matchup with Duke at that level is not worth it. I think your best chance here, because SMU and Wake, I don't think they would give you the win. They're not quad 1 wins at a neutral site, I don't believe. I'm not the expert on this. But
they played their way out of the tournament.
Yeah, Wake's not even a bubble team anymore. SMU hasn't really ever been on the bubble because they have no quality wins. So beating SMU or Wake wouldn't be enough, in my mind, to get you that quality win you need to impress the committee. So you have to play a Clemson or a Louisville. Clemson's the worst matchup, I think. But I think Clemson will be the number 3 seed because Louisville beat Clemson. So Louisville will be the 2 seed. So you have some chances there. Have y'all looked at that? What do you think, David? Like, what do you think about that scenario? What has to happen for UNC to get the win they need to advance and get picked for the NCAA tournament?
You know, it's not that hard to impress the committee chair, guys. Come on. You know who it is.
That's right. Yeah, Bubba Cunningham is the committee chair. David?
Go ahead, so with the win tonight, UNC currently in the 4 seed, I guess technically at 13-6. You got SMU who plays home against Syracuse at FSU. Wake is at Duke versus Georgia Tech.
They lost at Duke, too. Wake Forest already lost at Duke.
Right. You're 100% right. So Wake's at 12-7. You're at 13-6. I didn't get into the tiebreaker machinations of like what happens if everybody ends up at 13-7. The bottom line is you gotta win your first game. If you end up drawing a 6, you're gonna have to beat Clemson. And if you get into that 4 seed and get the double bye, you're gonna have to beat SMU, and then you're probably gonna play Duke, right? So like I think that might be the concern, is if you are the 4, you have to play for the 4, obviously. But then again, this is the confusing part. If you're the 4, that might mean that you beat Duke on Saturday, in which case you're less worried about everything. So
you don't want to bank on that.
No, you definitely don't. No, absolutely not. So, yeah, I don't know that we're going to get another chance at a quad 1 win in the first round, well, which would be the 3rd round of the ACC tournament now that they've done the double bye and whatnot. So Ross, bottom line is it's confusing in my opinion. You want to win every game in front of you.
I think if SMU wins out, they have Syracuse and Florida State, and Wake beats Georgia Tech, and UNC loses to Duke, which those would be like how it would go if everything followed who's favored, then UNC would be the 6th seed, SMU would be the 4 seed, and Wake would be the 5 seed, or reverse that. So that I think that's what's going to happen, and that would give UNC a matchup against Clemson. But then again, Clemson and Louisville, they'd have to win out their games for this all to make sense too. We're still a little ways away. But the point being is UNC doesn't have enough quality wins, and they're going to have to beat Clemson or Louisville or Duke to get selected for the tournament, or bubble teams ahead of them would have to implode. UNC right now, depending on whose bubble services and bracketology services you use, I'm going to refer to Jerry Palm, who is the bracketologist for CBS. He has UNC as the 2nd team in the last 4 out. I know, David, you've done some bracketology right here. So the bubble teams, Xavier, Baylor, Boise State, Arkansas, they're the last 4 in. You want those teams to lose. And then the first 4 out right now, Nebraska ahead of UNC, then UNC, Ohio State, Cincinnati. There's still some games to be played, which obviously you look at these, you want the teams that are on the bubble or in, you want them to lose, and obviously you want UNC to win.
So
David,
that's oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Connor.
Yeah, so bouncing off that, Ross, I'm glad you read those teams off because I was going to look at it from a national perspective. If you're Carolina, you want to play Clemson, you want to play Louisville, because if you look at the other teams on the bubble, Arkansas, a Georgia, an Oklahoma, an Indiana, teams like that in the SEC and the Big Ten, they have so many more chances for quad one and quality wins in their conference tournaments than Carolina does, with the ACC being complete dog shit this year. Like, if the SEC is historically great this year, the SEC is historically great. So Carolina does not have those same opportunities. You want to play Clemson or Louisville. So, you know, I'm not saying tank. We're not going to tank in college basketball, but you got to hope the cards fall that way. What's
really hurt UNC is just there haven't been enough chances for quad one wins, and they had them against Louisville and Clemson and Duke. They've lost those, and obviously, you know, losing to Kansas kind of fallen off. Losing to Michigan State, man, that would be a great win. Michigan State's like a top 8 team right now. They lost to Auburn. I mean, Florida, they were down 1 to Florida in the closing seconds, lost by 6 there. Like so many chances, and then the bad loss is Stanford and Wake Forest, and Pitt doesn't look too great either. They lost to Pitt, they split with Pitt. So that's the thing. Like the SEC, man, you look at it, SEC, they play ranked teams. You're playing a ranked team every other night, if not every night. And in the SEC tournament, all of those teams will have chances for more quality wins. So if a bubble team like a Vanderbilt or like a Arkansas or any of these bubble teams in the SEC, like they have a chance to get those wins in the SEC tournament, where UNC only have to align perfectly. And even then, they're facing a really bad matchup against Clemson, who's dominant inside, have some really big postman, and who killed UNC on the road in Clemson in the last matchup. David, got anything? Any bubble? Any ACC tournament seeding talk before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, 10 quad one losses is obviously not good, but 7 of those 10 teams are currently ranked in the top 14 in your AP top 25. So, like, I have to think that's going to matter when you get to seeding day. The bracket is huge tonight, or excuse me, the bubble is huge tonight. Texas currently leading Mississippi State at the time of recording. Baylor currently leading TCU at the time of recording. But then you've got other games that are happening down the line where you've got teams like Indiana who are playing, who matter. Nebraska and Ohio State are both playing. They're playing each other tonight. That's the thing that I was going to highlight when I started doing bubble research on who you have left before the tournament is there are several matchups between bubble teams. And that's where, as a UNC fan, you just kind of throw your hands up and you're like, I don't even know what I'm rooting for anymore, because Nebraska and Ohio State are both playing. Do you want one to get blown out, or do you want it to be a close game? Texas and Oklahoma are going to play before the tournament starts. And you mentioned Vanderbilt, who I want to bring up again, because Vanderbilt plays a couple of bubble teams as well. So I think UNC fans need to be Vandy fans as they go play Georgia and Arkansas.
Arkansas tonight, 10 p.m.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so stay tuned.
Feels a lot better, guys, when we're talking about is Carolina going to be the number 1 or 2 or 3 seed rather than are they going to get it off the bubble. I don't know if I like this. It's different.
Yeah, dude. I'm in a group chat with State fans, and for many years,
they're on the bubble for the ACC tournament.
That's right. I mean, State fans constantly on the bubble. Last couple of years, on the bubble, and it's like, dude, I don't know this life. I've rarely had to deal with bubble in my 25 years of fandom following UNC. So it is definitely different. Weighing all these scenarios, it's pretty confusing too without a visual here on the podcast. But I think that's about it for us. Anything else to add, guys? Good win, fun to watch with y'all.
Last thing I have, do you guys see any resemblance, because I know the comparisons are going to start this week, to the 2022 team that made that run, that closed the year on an 8-2 run, including the ACC tournament? Is there any similarities there? Is there any possibility for a magical run like that? Because I know that's going to start this week.
Go ahead, David.
Does anybody know where Brady Manick is? Is he in Australia? Does he have one more year of eligibility?
Lithuania? Where is he?
I'd feel a lot better about this team if Brady Manick was on it. I wouldn't say yet no chance. Let's talk after Saturday, I guess, because that's the big thing that I would leave us on as my theme of the night. Is just basically like, even if you get beat by double digits on Saturday, don't let the good of the last 6 games go down the drain as you go into Greensboro next week.
Yeah, I don't really like that comparison. I get it with the wins and kind of hitting a stride here late. I'm looking at what UNC did that year. They won. They had went on 6 straight wins there as well. Anyway, beating Duke, of course, 94-81, beating Virginia in the ACC tournament, losing Virginia Tech. But that had Baycott. Baycott was a dominant force down low. They had Caleb Love as a sophomore playing out of his mind. And Brady Manick, as much as you can compare Jalen Withers to Brady Manick in terms of their 3-point shooting in the last 5 or 6 games, completely different. And Brady Manick was leading UNC in scoring that year in a couple games. I'm just looking at the stats here. He was such a better 3-point shooter, more pure. I thought he was a really nasty, aggressive defender when he wanted to be, like, could get his nose in there and was a pest at times as a rebounder. I think the rosters are so different. And look, you had Leaky Black as well, a 6'8", 6'9" defender as your 3, who was I guess he was a senior that year, and of course RJ Davis as well. Yeah. So I get the kind of the schedule and how they're playing comparisons, but the roster, I think that team was way more talented. Real quick, we're hoping to get Rod on. So this is going to be released. You'll listen to this, late Tuesday night, probably Wednesday morning. You'll listen to this Wednesday afternoon. Hoping to get Rod Baxley on. There's a press conference with Bill Belichick tomorrow in Chapel Hill. That's Wednesday. I'll be going to that, and also open practice for spring practice. I mean, I'm super intrigued about Bill Belichick, obviously, and whenever he's going to talk to the media, I'm hoping to get down there for that. So we may do something with Rod Baxley, talking UNC basketball, and then recapping a Bill Belichick podcast. I'll talk about Belichick regardless of whether we get Rod on or not. So that's what to look forward to on the Big Hitters Only podcast. Producer Connor, appreciate your time and all you do behind the scenes for this podcast. David, great performance. We're going to try to have David here as a regular guest throughout the rest of this season and into maybe some off-season stuff. The great thing about David, he's good at off-topic stuff as well, full of takes and insight and a variety of interests. Appreciate you guys. DrinkDeltaSpirits.com, promo code BHO. We'll talk to you next time.